So we got an advanced screener of the film Dark Harvest, thanks to Lee McCoy from Drum Dums for getting me that email. For some reason, we don't seem to get the screeners all that often. I'm looking at you, Shudder. So this is from director David Slade, who I know most from Hard Candy and 30 Days of Night. I'm not the biggest 30 Days of Night fans, but I know that people love that film. So that should perk up a lot of ears right there. I am a big fan of Hard Candy.
Yeah, me too.
He directed an episode of Breaking Bad. He directed 5 episodes of Hannibal. He directed an episode of the Black Mirror, which was Metalhead. And he also directed Bandersnatch, the other Black Mirror like interactive movie that they made.
That's really cool. I didn't know that.
So now this is based on a award-winning horror book, and this is pretty heavily anticipated by fans of the book. And this is a film that's kind of been in like limbo for quite a while. Like this has been on the release schedule for like 3 years, and for some reason it just never came out. And after having seen the movie, whenever you get those kinds of movies where the studio just won't drop them, you're like, uh-oh.
Right.
Like
get worried.
This isn't good. This isn't a good sign.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, a movie comes out like this that is so good that you're like, what pisses me off more than anything is I feel like this movie isn't getting promoted at all. It's not getting a theater release to my knowledge. This is going straight to VOD on Friday the 13th, so in 2 days from now for you guys. It's kind of shocking to me that this isn't being promoted more, because it's pretty rare these days that we get a really unique, cool creature feature. I would liken this, if I had to liken this to anything from this year, just because of like how unique it felt, the indie feel but with atmosphere, and like the creature feature aspect, I would say I would liken it the most to Cobweb.
Yeah.
Now, if I was to liken it to anything aesthetically when it comes to the creature, I think anybody who's going to be honest about this, it has a lot of similarities to this guy right here.
Good old
Pumpkinhead.
Pumpkinhead.
There's definitely some similarities, 100%. Okay, so as far as what the film is about, this is kind of tough to talk about, but I'll try my best when it comes to spoilers, or what I would consider spoilers. We find ourselves in an alternative 1960s small town America, and there is this preparation that this town makes every year. The film, weirdly, has a lot of similarities, and this is going to surprise a lot of people who have not read the book, to The Hunger Games, which is, you're like, wait, what? The Hunger Games? Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very similar in some of the premise. And essentially what happens is they prep for the whole year, and on Halloween night, all of the male children of age are sent out to hunt Sawtooth Jack, who is this like pumpkin head, literally. He actually has like a pumpkin head, and Pumpkinhead does not. So Sawtooth, this should be Sawtooth Jack, and this guy should be Pumpkinhead. But yeah, so they hunt him down, and it's something that they have to do every year, and the winner gets the spoils.
Yep.
So I think that's as much as we need to know. So
that's a good synopsis.
Okay, I want to bring up a bad film really quick, because actually I want Kaylee to talk about this. So Pet Sematary Bloodlines.
Oh my god. No, it's okay. So I meant to talk about this in our review for Pet Sematary, but I'll talk about it here. That film is set in 1969.
Yes.
And the entire time I was watching it, I was like, nothing feels like it's 1969.
No.
Like there's some old-timey cars, but all of the outfits that everybody's wearing, I'm like, they could be in the the 2000s, 2023 easily. And I was kind of bummed about it because I think that that's when you do a prequel movie set in a time period, you want to have like time period accurate clothing and like really build that atmosphere.
Yeah.
This film does that 1,000%.
Yeah.
It is like the costume design I loved. There's some like they're kind of like greasers, like they have like the slicked back hair and like the black jackets and stuff. Love it. Like really, really cool. There's a girl, I mean, there's a lot of girls, but one of the girls in this has like some really cute like 60s clothing on that's kind of it sort of looks 50s-ish to me, but I loved it. Everything
it felt 50s. Sure.
Everything looked like it was from a different time. And that's a really charming aspect of the film that I appreciated.
I actually have I can't talk about it here, obviously. This isn't a spoiler discussion. Maybe for a Monster Monday soon enough.
Yeah, we should definitely do spoilers.
But I actually kind of have a theory on why it feels more like the 50s versus the 60s.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But regardless, so, okay, the film has a lot of things great going for it. The creature design is excellent.
Wonderful.
Right? Really great stuff there. The gore and the kills are great when they happen. We get a decent amount of them. Mm-hmm. I would absolutely have wanted more for sure, but sure. That's, typical me. The characters, which we focus on a couple characters, but we have one main character and then there's a female character that would be like our second main character, but the focus of the film is on our main male protagonist, and he's very good, very compelling, very relatable, and it is very much like it feels like Grease in the sense of like you got the greasers and you've got the jocks, so you've got that aspect to it for sure. There is something that's frustrating about the film. It's pretty minor, but it does bring the film down a bit for me. Not a crazy amount, because as of right now, I would easily put this in my top 10.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
There's some choices that are made by a character pertaining to cars multiple times.
Yeah.
That I'm like, why wouldn't you just do this? That doesn't make any sense. And so those like, this doesn't make any sense moments here and there was like, why did you do that? But really, honestly, outside of that, what's great about this film is how unique it feels.
Yes.
Right? When you're talking about like everybody's out there in the theater and they're seeing Exorcist Believer and Saw 10 and whatever, and they're like, oh, Hollywood, they throw out these like 18th installments of a franchise. They're kind of by the book, by the numbers type of things. They don't bring any like originality or anything to them. Well, here you go. And this is why I just wish that the studios would have more faith in projects like this, because you've got like When Evil Lurks gets like a limited run. Now, do I think a lot of people, like a lot of random people, a lot of normies are going to go watch When Evil Lurks? A, no. And probably B, would they like it if they did? Probably not, because it's way too hardcore, way too violent. I think it's phenomenal, but that's putting that aside. But something like Cobweb, they didn't promote that almost at all. They dropped it in theaters for like a limited run for a week.
July.
And they just didn't really back it all that much. And it got good word of mouth, right? This isn't one, Cobweb's not one that I could really consider completely under the radar, because the word of mouth did elevate it to at least known by a decent amount of people in the horror community. I fear that people who aren't familiar with this book, if this doesn't get the proper word of mouth that it deserves, this could definitely end up in like, the number one most overlooked horror movie of 2023.
Yeah.
Alongside of like a Moon Garden or something, where I'm just like, why are you not promoting this thing more? Because this thing is awesome.
Yes.
Right? So we don't get creature features often.
Yeah.
And when we do, I don't feel like the creature and the kills really live up to what it should. And I feel like for the most part, it absolutely does here.
This film is like everything that Children of the Corn was trying to do. This film does it so much better, and it definitely makes me interested in reading the book and comparing, but I was definitely in love with this film. I think that the atmosphere, I was talking to you about this earlier, I think the atmosphere is like wonderfully moody and dark and very perfect for like a Halloween vibe. The kills, although like you, I would of course love more, I still was so happy with the gore that we got in this because we see a good amount of them and they're very graphic.
Yeah.
And this, like, the story itself is so compelling. Like everything that's happening, I was intrigued and I had a lot of like stakes, I guess, like in the protagonist and what he's going through.
Yeah.
And then there's just a really great air of mystery too.
Yes.
Throughout, like you're wondering, like what is this really? What does this really mean?
Yeah.
And I was very satisfied with the answers that we get in the end. I think it's got a very dark ending, but a satisfying one.
We also have some adult characters.
Mm-hmm.
The parents of our main character, the dad is played by the guy who looks, he always makes me think that he's Henry Thomas for half a second. But he's the dad from Black Phone.
Yeah.
And then the mom in this is Mike Flanagan, like
alum.
alum who is the mom in Ouija Origin of Evil.
Yeah.
She's in Hill House. Mm-hmm. They're both great.
Oh yeah, they're wonderful.
She's absolutely, sideways at some points in this. I was like, damn, she's bringing it for sure.
Oh yeah, I was impressed with her performance.
So another thing that I just thought of while you were talking that I think does give me now maybe an answer to my question of why this got shelved for 3 years and wasn't released. This is a tough film to market, and there's a reason why. So typically a film like this would be catering to the Hunger Games level of audience. Because and something I'll commend this film for enormously, the kids in this movie,
oh my god,
actually look like kids. They actually look like 17, 16-year-olds, right? We don't have 25-year-olds playing 17-year-olds. Like, they have baby faces. They very much feel like kids, which makes it so much worse when it's happening, because there is that disconnect when the kids look like they're 25 and they're getting killed. You don't care as much,
right?
I mean, it still sucks. I mean, human life is human life, but when they look like kids, it's like, man, this is rough, right? So, but when I think about this film and marketing it, they could have easily, in fact, I'm pretty much positive the studio probably tried to push for like a PG-13, let's appeal to the kids rating, right? And they just kind of got, when they were thinking of promoting it, the film does, like, if I look at like a trailer in my head that would be pieced together, it kind of looks like it would be for teenagers.
Yeah. I mean,
and it's not in the sense of like, it's R-rated, and they're not trying to appeal to 13, 14-year-olds. They're trying to appeal to adults. And I think a lot of adults would see this and say, a trailer without the gore and, the dark stuff, and they would just kind of aesthetically look at it with all the kids and everything, and they would think, this looks like it's probably for teenagers.
Yeah, I think that probably is the biggest problem with marketing the film, and I'm so glad that it didn't end up getting a PG-13 rating, because the R rating on this it's everything. I think that, and what you're saying too about the kids looking like kids, like, not only does that impact like any deaths that happen, but there's also things that the kids do that make it even more extreme to see them, doing these activities. And I loved all that. It's so dark, and it would have been horrible as a PG-13 film.
it kind of like devolves in when the things culminate. It kind of reminds me of something like a Lord of the Flies or something.
Very much that vibe.
So that's cool. I really, really like our main female protagonist and what that's saying about the culture of that time. And yeah, I can't speak highly enough about the creature design.
Yeah.
And funny note here, when we were watching this, Kaylee basically was speaking for me because I'm always going to say this, but literally like a couple deaths had happened and they were like cutaways.
Yeah.
And we got a little nervous and Kaylee out loud says, I really hope we're going to see some of these kills. And within the next about 5 seconds, we got a super gruesome kill. Yeah. And I like kind of just looked over and I was like, there you go. You know, like satiated.
Yeah.
And then for the next maybe like 2 minutes straight, there was just gruesome kill after gruesome kill. And I was like, well, you asked, you received.
It was rad. It was so rad. There's one portion of the film that we don't see some deaths, and I think that's probably where both you and I would love to, but it's still like a really fun moment in a gross, dark way.
It could have been, I wish I would have seen it. It's funny. That scene reminded me of like Evil Dead.
Yes.
Yeah. And then there's another kill in this that's, I don't know if I would consider it 100% an homage, but it felt very similar to a kill in Hatchet.
Yeah, I love this film. Like, it's definitely for sure in the top 10. Like, we were, there's a lot of really great films that have come out in the last, couple weeks that I have to sit down and really analyze which ones are going to be in the top 5. But this one's a contender for sure. I loved it, and I would love to do like a Monster Monday spoiler discussion. I would love to read the book and do a comparison and all of that, because this is a great film, and it's definitely one that you should be watching 1,000%.
Yeah, and as Kaylee had already mentioned, there is this huge air of mystery that is never fully like resolved. You're not 100% exactly sure what is going on, which might frustrate some people, but I like that intrigue. Once again, this is like the mystery that's intriguing and not frustrating.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, like now I want to think about it. And it's fun to talk about after, like, what do you think? Yeah. Like, do you think this is because of that? And what do you think they've been doing? And
you get some answers too. Like, you do get, like, that's kind of what I was meaning earlier. Yeah. Like, there's a satisfaction in the answer that you do get at the end, but there are other elements that are left open to discussion and interpretation, which does make it an exciting film to rewatch and talk about with people. And it makes me, like I've been saying, just very curious about the book and if there's more information in there. And,
I read half of it. I've read half of it so far. And most of it is in the film.
Yeah.
They've changed some little things here and there, and I'm sure some people will have some kind of like agenda or something, But I will be surprised if this doesn't end up as a decent amount of people's like number one of the year. Yeah. So if you were really heavily looking forward to this one, if this was something that's been on your radar for a while, if you're a big fan of the book and all of that stuff, I think there's a high percentage you will be satisfied, right? You can't please everybody, but I think, a large portion of people who are looking forward to this will be happy. David Slade definitely did a great job with this one. I don't know what the budget is on this, but for sure, if I had to think about it, this is my favorite on-screen monster in a while. We don't get monster movies that much anymore.
And they're so cool, and I love them.
The creature design here, when we get like close-ups and stuff, and we really deal with this thing. I would have liked to see it in action a little bit more, but I'm sure that was a budgetary constraint. And I would 1,000% watch a part 2.
Oh yeah.
But just taking off from where this leaves off.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. But I'm trying to think of like the last, the smile demon. But we only get that for like 2 seconds.
Yeah, but this is really like active throughout the whole film. Like you're seeing the creature design, for a majority of it.
That's a question for you guys. What is your favorite on-screen monster in the last decade? That's a tough question, but I'd have to really sit down and like research it and think about it.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's that like big of a list. I just don't feel like we get that many. I would say, if off the top of my head, the Jotun.
That's what I thought
from
you
the
were
Ritual.
Gonna say, but that to me, like, this is better in a way because of what I said about how much of the film you are seeing the creature design, whereas in the Ritual you get that design at the very end.
Very
Same
little,
thing with
yeah.
the smile demon.
Sure.
And those are great, wonderful films and wonderful creature designs. But I just think, like, for a creature feature, I want to see the creature. I want to see him running around and doing stuff, and we get a lot of that in this, which makes me really happy.
Speaking of which, this is now going to light a fire under my butt. Maybe we'll even do a revisited series, since I did these so early on in the channel. I have no doubt my reviews are terrible. I want to show Kaylee at least the first 2 Pumpkinhead movies.
Oh yeah, we haven't done those, so. And
there was supposed to be some Pumpkinhead remake happening that was years ago. I'm gonna have to look into that. Whatever the hell happened to that thing? I forgot all about that. I wonder what happened. So, Dark Harvest. October 13th, Friday the 13th. Be there. We're going to be at Friday the 13th, the final chapter in theaters, because we already saw this.
Yes.
But I definitely can't wait to watch it again.
Yes.
100,000% going in the collection.
Yes.
And I will be recommending it to any creature feature fans.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. I mean, this is one I want to talk about in spoilers for sure in the future, because I feel like I want to talk about so many more aspects of this film.
I do too. And I just want to rewatch it too.
and last thing, when Kaylee was talking about this and that, this is something I completely forgot. I'm glad I remembered it. As far as like the 50s, 60s thing go, it is set in 1962 and 63. So number one, she was talking about like the costumes and like hair and stuff like that. Sure. But they did the buildings, which was really cool, right? And that adds to that production value, right? They went into town, and all the buildings, you feel like you're in a 1960s town. So that was super cool. But it was also like this was purposely acted in a way that emulates 1960s cinema.
Yeah.
The way the dialogue is spoken from the sheriff Rick, the dad, right? Some of the kids, like there's a bit of overacting and very like theatrical for that reminds me of acting of the 60s.
Yeah, I felt that.
And that's
too.
On purpose. I don't think that's like kids are overacting. I think the director's like, I want it to feel like it's from the 60s.
Yeah.
So that was super cool.
Super cool. Yeah, the writing itself too is written. It's great.
And I love the opening narration as well.
I do too. I loved that.
That sets a great atmosphere.
Such a great atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So big, huge recommendation. Yes. Get hyped for it. You have 2 days if you watch this right when it dropped to start anticipating. Hopefully we didn't oversell it. Get your expectations up too high.
Yeah.
But that was a long spoiler-free discussion. But there's so much to talk about, and there's so much more to talk about when we can actually talk about it in spoiler discussion.
Yeah.
So thanks to Lee McCoy once again for bringing this email to us, and thanks to MGM for sending this to us.
Thank you.
And I hope to be on their list for future stuff. You heard me. All right, guys.
Bye. You got this.
Of course I do. I'm Sinister Cinema.